Well, there it is, WTiiWarcraft here. We're going to be talking about the latest patch notes, which are 1.32.6, which you can find on the PTR right now, which is playable, but will require 26GB download. In this video, we will be going over the patch notes, giving my thoughts and opinions, whilst also demonstrating and testing the old, which is the left-hand side, versus the new, the latest from the patch. So, let's start off with the latest descriptions. I'm using Wowhead, because it's easier to read from their site. Blizzard says, Warcraft 3 Reforged PTR patch notes. Please note these patch notes are a work in progress and will be updated with further changes before the release of patch 1.32.6. This balance change has a few different goals in mind. For heroes in general, we're looking at the costs and sometimes the functionality of hero ultimate abilities to make them a bit more competitive with a hero's baseline abilities and mana pool. Items are another big area of this patch. Charged with level 5 and 6 are getting a shake up to see if we can encourage more usage of these categories going forward. Additionally, we want to support map makers' endeavors by doing a balance pass on the units provided by Mercenary camps. Finally, in 1 vs 1 matchups, we want to address the rifle pushes in Human vs Night Elf and slightly alter the early game in Human vs Undead. There will be also a map pool rotation in this patch. One map per game mode will be rotated out and a new one rotated in. This time around, all of the maps are made by our wonderful community map makers. So there's a few details here. We won't be demonstrating these, they're just insignificant. Raccoons no longer fade away, fix an issue with Northrend tree wall doodad. As for campaign, resolved an issue with walking animation. Editor fixed a legacy issue where the summon damage data field for feedback abilities was capped at 10. So what we're going to focus on is the unit balance. So starting off with the Mountain King with the human. Thunderclap cooldown increased from 6 to 7 seconds across all levels. Developers notes, over the past year, the Mountain King's Thunderclap has been slightly overperforming, while meta changes in 1 vs 1 have seen its usage reduced. It remains a very strong ability in team games. We want to reduce its uptime, which should also allow players to better micro against the Mountain King by giving them more time to reposition between those casts. So let's take a look at the Mountain King. We have level 6. We'll go with level 3 Thunderclap, because it looks a bit flashier. So the old version has a 6-second cooldown, the new version has a 7-second cooldown. So we're just going to position ourselves next to these ogres, and we're going to spam our Thunderclap, and you can sort of see just how much damage one can do with the old version versus the new version. So here we go. Thunderclap level 3, Thunderclap level 3. Old versus new, left versus right. Okay. So that's the new one, or that's the old one, sorry. So we're going to be spamming that and then tabbing over to the other one and spamming him whenever we can. These ogres have approximately, I think, 1,000 health. Mountain Kings run out of mana. So kind of shows you there's not too much of a difference. Obviously only technically 3 seconds difference because that's 3 casts. But the Mountain King have more than 330 mana because there could be items such as the Pendant of Mana or Sobi Mask. So this is a level 6 Mountain King with respectable stats, but in a team fight or even in a 1 vs 1 situation, the slower Thunderclaps do actually, I think, balance out the Thunderclap a little bit. So I think that's a good change. That's my personal opinion on it. I do like human. I don't really want to see the Mountain King nerfed with his Thunderclap, but I do think that's a sensible change because it is hard to deal with when the human player just essentially spams it and then runs away eventually. So that gives a few extra critical seconds for the players to respond. Now, let's take a look at the Rifleman. Attack delay increased from 1.35 to 1.4. Developers notes, this change is focused around the human versus night elf rifleman push. We don't inherently want the rifle push to completely disappear, nor for riflemen to fail too far in power, but rather for the push to be significantly, slightly more equal between the attacker and the defender. We're adjusting the power on both sides, with this being the human side of the change. So let's take a look at that. This is the 1.35 attack cooldown. This is the 1.4. So it's an extra 0.05 for the rifle. Or 0.05, whatever, math. So I'm just going to make these two attack each other. You stay away from that. That's for later. Thank you very much. Okay, so this is old versus new. So we're going to attack into one another and we're going to see sort of roughly how much damage is done. That's me just typing some commands for later.
What do you need? Well, if you think they're gonna rush, you might want to build something.
Thank you, Baroldly. So Not much of a difference, let's face it, but it is still going to have an impact because you can see this guy is catching up. His attacks are quicker, his attacks are slower. But overall, the damage has been almost neck and neck. I assume because this guy's been getting more high rolls, because it is still 18 to 24 damage. Technically, the one on the left shouldn't lose, but if the one on the right gets high rolls, then there's not much you can do about that. Okay, well, fair enough. The one on the left won. So, that's how it should have been, but I reckon he got some low rolls there. I think that would have been leaving him with a little bit more health, but you can see the damage is very insignificant, but unfortunately is still technically a nerf. Riflemen are really strong at the moment, so I can understand that. I'm not sure if Riflemen... I mean, there's no compensation to footmen or anything, for example. By nerfing the Riflemen, they've not done anything to help footmen, so that's my concern there. Paladin. Resurrection mana cost reduced from 200 to 150. Developers notes, Resurrection already had the restriction of waiting for a player's army to be dead before casting. At the same time, Paladins often spend much of their time casting Holy Light to keep units alive in the first place. Reducing the mana cost should also help boost the desirability of this ultimate by reducing mana tension. So this isn't really one that needs to be demonstrated as such, but for argument's sake, we will just demonstrate it. So you can kind of get an idea. So again, level 6 Paladins, old versus new, a reasonable amount of mana at this stage, so you can sort of see the comparison of how much mana one would have should they have to use Resurrection. How much would they have left at this point? So we're just going to take these footmen and we're going to bring them up here. And then we're going to kill them off because we're cruel. And we're going to use Resurrection on both the Paladins. One, the old one having 200, the new one having 150. So 191 mana and 240 mana for this one. So, you know, that's honestly the difference between potentially another heal, which is a big deal. I think that is. I had a game recently where I was playing a 4 versus 4 RT, I think, or was it even... I think it was 1 versus 1 even. And I was just... Yeah, it was. And I was just waiting for Resurrection, because I was about 179 mana. And I was like, well, I'm going to have to technically wait about 20-ish seconds here before I can really get the mana, before I can cast the Resurrection. I was even worried. I think I was even lower than that. I was worried that the corpses were going to run away. By run away, I mean run out. But they do last 90 seconds. So I think that's a useful change. Certainly no criticism there. Simple one again now, going on to the Orc Shadow Hunter. Big Bad Voodoo mana cost reduced from 200 to 150. Developers notes, we're reducing the mana cost to help with mana tension. The ultimate itself was not altered at this time, as we want to keep the unique ability of how it works. And instead, if we can see it push to be a bit higher of a pick through increasing availability of the spell. So that will certainly help. 150 mana on the new one versus 200 on the old. It helps. I'm not sure if it's enough to make it be picked over, say, a level 3 Hex, for example. But you would almost definitely go for level 3 Healing Wave. Or level 3 Serpent Ward. So I'm not sure if it's enough, to be honest, to make it a pick. But then again, it's a completely situational situation, so... Not too much to say about that. Now we move into something a bit cooler. Farseer. Earthquake duration reduced from 25 to 20 seconds. Building damage per second increased from 50 to 60. Mana cost reduced from 150 to 125. Earthquake no longer affects friendly units and structures. So developers notes, with Earthquake no longer affecting friendly units, Farseer's players should now have a new slowing option available to them in combat. Reducing the duration while keeping the overall damage roughly the same makes responding to a Farseer casting Earthquake more important and gives a bit more consistency to how much damage it can inflict. So we have two demonstrations here, both identical buildings, humans. We're going to use the old Farseer, which will be on the top, versus the new Farseer on the bottom. And what that was basically saying, that patch is when you use Earthquake, your units will no longer be slowed. So if I did this, my units aren't going to be slowed. But if this was a player 2 unit, it's going to be very slow in its movement speed. Well, that escalated, didn't it? I somehow managed to convert all of those to player 2. Anyway, I'll let my units finish those off, and we'll concentrate on doing double Earthquake on this at the same time. So let's pull you over, let's pull you over. And you... Actually, let's redo that. I think we can do that a bit nicer. pretty hard to cast 2 abilities at the same time. But I will try. If we give him a bit of a gap before the other guy, that might help. And I've got to get the angle right, so... They should cast roughly the same time. Going to change the camera position so you can see a bit more of the health bars. See the difference? Old at the top, new at the bottom. So the damage is quicker from the new, but it's not actually as much in total, I don't think, versus the old once it's finished. But the old is still going. The new guy could run away by this point or cast some more spells or do a couple of damages with right clicks by the time the new old one is going. So the old one leaves with 1250 on the castle, the new one with 1300. So that's a significant buff, to be quite frank. The damage is very minor in terms of the total done. It's basically the same, but 5 seconds less and also less mana. So more time to run away or cast other spells. I think that's a significant change. That makes the Farseer a bit more interesting when it comes to Earthquake play, so good stuff. Tauren Chieftain. This is much like the Mountain King, basically. War Stomp cooldown increased per level from 666 to 777. So developers notes, War Stomp has shown to be quite powerful in recent months. We believe this is more due to the Tauren Chieftain's ability to be more consistent, delivering stuns. Rather than the damage increase to War Stomp, simply reducing its damage would be less likely to lower the power of War Stomp. This change doubles the downtime of the ability at level 3, giving opponents more time to counter micro. Additionally, this weakens the Tauren Chieftain's early game, allowing opponents to better push for map control. Well, that's funny because they mentioned that. It weakens the Tauren Chieftain's early game. Yeah, but the Tauren Chieftain is one of the weakest early game heroes, whether it's first or second or what. Anyway, let's take a look at him. Old versus new. So again, it doesn't really matter which War Stomp we go with because I think they've all got the same cooldown. So we'll just take the level 3 and we'll just demonstrate again versus these ogres. I like the light. Hey, watch yourself, buddy. So we can demonstrate old versus new. So you can see the difference in seconds. This is really important. Like the Thunderclap one, okay, it doesn't stun. But an actual stun is very important to actually put a little bit of time difference on. Because that just allows you to control your opponent so much with a stun that is almost as quick as the cooldown. Or the same level, if you see what I mean. So there's a demonstration of that. Pretty straightforward, really. Again, probably a good change. It does nerf fun a little bit, but I think for balance purposes, it probably makes it a bit more opportunistic for players to counterplay it, aka, as it was mentioning, move your units, spread your units so that they can't all be stunned before that next cooldown is ready. Witch Doctor, this is a bit a tricky one to show off, but I've created a character called Slappy who's hopefully going to help us with that. Stasis Trap activation delay decreased from 10 to 9 seconds. Detection radius reduced from 250 to 175. Activation time reduced from 1 to 0.5. New data variable in the map editor, detonation delay. So developers' notes include Witch Doctors are still fairly rare in high level play. We want to tune up its Stasis Trap ability, and to do that, we looked into how it could trap more units. A smaller detonation ring combined with a shorter delay means that units will have less time to move through the area of effect before getting trapped, and will have less time to attack the totem when it reveals itself. So this is definitely a buff. We're going to demonstrate this as best as we can. Here we have a gnoll called Slappy. We're going to put him on hold and him on hold, and we're going to show the difference between the two. I've got to try to... It might be easier for me to just move you guys back and kill off all of these ogres if I can. Okay. 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 If you're enjoying this video, make sure to thumbs up, subscribe, it really helps out. I've spent like multiple hours creating this on the stream, twitch.tv/witty, so I can demonstrate this to you guys. So there we go. We can move those all back now, so they're not going to interfere with any player spellcasts, hopefully. So there's Slappy, there's old Witch Doctor, there's new Witch Doctor. So old at the top, new at the bottom. So Stasis Trap versus the new Stasis Trap. Let's try and get the same cooldown on this. So Let's knock you back just a little bit so we can get the timing roughly right. So we can zoom in a bit here. So this one should activate quicker. Boom. And then boom. And we can also demonstrate this another fashion. So if I do this again, we're going to do this from this side. What's going to happen is you'll see the detonation ring radius. They should walk back when they go invisible. But the top one goes off, right? Because the unit is fairly close. Whereas the new one means that player units, which will typically be moving in a big group, are going to take longer to activate this. So if that player unit moves through this, the bunch of units are going to reach the center point of this by the time it goes off, as opposed to at the top, where a lot of them might even get out of the radius of it by the time it gets off. So technically, the new one should hit more units. That's basically the difference. So now we'll take a look at this change, which is the Night Elf Keeper of the Grove. Entangling Roots, cast range on level 3 increased from 600 to 800. Why? Would you do such a thing? Developers notes, while we like where the Keeper of the Grove's early game power is, oh I bet you do, we want to give this ability a little boost in the late game. Since armies grow in size, especially in team games, reinstating its old range should give the Keeper a little more ease of use in late game scenarios. Honestly. And we can also talk about the next one and we can demonstrate them both. So Tranquility and Vulnerability time removed. Again, actually I don't like this change. Duration reduced from 15 to 12. Healing increased from 40 to 48. So this is actually a buff to Tranquility, except for the removal of Tranquility in Vulnerability. So developers' notes are, in the past we tried an experiment with Tranquility where we would give invulnerability to heroes when casting channeled spells. After testing it, we're moving away from this as we feel it dampens the personality of channeled abilities. Ideally, a channeled ability is very powerful with the drawback of being interruptible. The weakness is also what gives the abilities their character, as finding the right time and place to maximize its power is the main gameplay of using them. Adding invulnerability clouds this, as it now acts more like a normal cast and forget spell, but with a little extra bonus at the end. It also acted as anti-debuff mechanic, which was undesirable. While it could be made to not remove debuffs, that would act as a new special case that's different from regular invulnerability, and it would add new complexity for players to memorize. That's an interesting thought, actually. I haven't got to read this point, but that's an interesting thought. I'll go over that in a short while. Instead, we want to further reduce the duration of the spell, but increase the power of its effect, giving greater benefit even when shut down by opponents, but also encouraging opponents to react quickly to the channeled ability. So, first of all, old versus new. Level 3 Entangle is the only one that is actually affected, so I guess it's not that big a deal, but it's still annoying that they even buff the Keeper of the Grove at all. So you got the top versus here. So let's entangle this. Let's entangle that. Let's see the difference. Yeah. So that's how much closer you have to get before you can get an entangle off. If you get to level 3 entangle, you can now entangle from a really long distance. And I don't think that should have changed. I think that should not have changed. There's no reason. Look at it. It does so much damage. He's not even tapped it. This is literally just the entangle damage itself. Versus a 1000 health mob. Does that really need more range? Really? He's going to kill it. What the hell? He's practically killed the damn thing with just 175 mana cast spell. That's crazy. So, yeah, that's not necessary. Now, the other thing to take a look at is the Tranquility. So we're going to do left versus right here. Old versus new. One of them has invulnerability. One of them does not. In fact, what we need to do is... well, we can use one Keeper of the Grove over here. We can change you to player 1. We can change you to player 1. And we'll take the other Tranquility over here. Slappy! Stop it. You're distracting me. Okay, so we're going to stand there. So that should be in range for this Tranquility, and we're going to stand here. So you need to get a couple of hits off on him just to make the health about the same. Hey, nice. 28 versus 24. Good, good, good. Okay. So we've got these two to look at. So we're going to see the healing difference. So we're going to activate Tranquility at the same time. Top versus bottom, old versus new. So not a massive difference, but this, remember, is going to be affecting more than one unit. So that is significant. He's already done. He can move now. He doesn't get quite as much healing. It's literally 20 less healing. But he can move 3 seconds earlier, which is definitely a buff. However, you do lose the invulnerability status. And the reason why I actually prefer them to have that invulnerability status is because it can be used skillfully, aka to dodge a Stormbolt or a Death Coil. If you had a Death Coil coming to you, you can activate Tranquility for that invulnerability, and it literally lasts 1 second. You see, it's gone straight away. So at most, 1 second, maybe even 0.5 seconds. Just the premise of it giving you that really crisp mini anti-Stormbolt, anti-Death Coil, anti-CC ability is really kind of cool because it allows pro players to even utilize their ultimate just to dodge something that could kill them otherwise. Whereas the second guy can't do that. Now, I agree it's a channeled spell, so it should be vulnerable, but it is vulnerable after that 1 second point. So in 1.31, it used to last for 3 seconds, the invulnerability, but that got changed recently beyond 1.31 to 1 second, which I think, again, is it's fine. 1 second and then it's gone. You're not really going to notice it. By the time it's cast, then you can CC them almost immediately afterwards. But it could be used to dodge a mechanic like a Stormbolt, which I think is a really cool thing. And now, they did mention that they were potentially interested in the idea of creating a new version. So it was something like this. While it could be made to not remove debuffs, because that's what the issue was with Tranquility, is it will also remove things like Banshee Curse or Cripple from Necromancer, or Slow from Sorks. So it was a bit cheeky to get out of those kind of debuffs. I prefer it to be used to get out of like a Stormbolt than really getting out of a debuff. So that's what they were worried about. So I kind of understand their purpose for removing the invulnerability in that sense. But they could introduce a new form of invulnerability that actually just makes you invulnerable to like a Stormbolt, but doesn't actually remove a debuff. So this is really an interesting gameplay mechanic, which I think deserves like a further talk. Maybe I'll do a further talk at it further down the line, but this video is going to go on forever, and I'm trying to be as quick as I possibly can. There's a lot to go over, so we're going to move on to the Druid of the Claw now. Base damage in bear form increased from 23 to 24. Developers notes, we think bears could use a bit more power in the mid to late game in general. Oh, by the way, just quickly before I go into that, if you wanted to demonstrate this, because they were worried about players not being able to memorize it, there's a thing in custom games where if a creature enrages, it goes red. It could be something like that. The character could go like purple or something like that for a split moment where it's not invulnerable to debuffs, but only invulnerable to actual CC, such as Stomp or Stormbolt. So that's just a little solution from me. Whether that's the right solution or not, you decide. But that's just an idea. At least I'm giving something back in that. Druid of the Claw. Base damage in bear form increased from 23 to 24. Developers notes, we think bears could use a bit more power in the mid to late game in general, especially against undead. Additionally, with human versus night elf rifle pushes, they're really obsessed with this human versus night elf. Anyway, often occurring right only when a few bears are out. We felt that a slight bear buff would help defenders just that little bit more to help keep them in the game. I don't know this is going to really help with that, but you know, I guess this was their excuse to nerf rifles or something? I don't know. So basically the difference here is, believe it or not, he is in bear form. There's some sort of graphical glitch and I couldn't get him to demonstrate, but they are the same. One has 24 to 29, the other has 25 to 30. You might be curious as to how that impacts when you get upgrades, so I'm going to show you. This is a very non-significant upgrade. So one upgrade, 25 to 35, two upgrades, 26 to 41, 27 to 42. So it's basically the same. Unless there's something wrong with my version here, this is how it should come out in between the differences. So it's literally just one difference. 1 damage difference all the way through, from what I can tell, unless I'm wrong. I apologise if I'm wrong, but that's what I could tell. Now, Druid of the Talon. This is self-explanatory. Gold cost reduced from 145 to 135. Developers notes previously Druids of the Talon had their gold cost increased because they are essentially super imbalanced in the Orc versus Night Elf matchup. They would just cyclone everything. The meta has changed quite a bit since then, and we would like to reduce their cost back to its old value to better encourage their usage. So whilst I agree that Druid of the Talon is not often used, I don't really want his cost being reduced because that meta was absolutely horrendous. I could use a worse word for that. But it was absolutely horrible to watch basically Night Elf versus Orc with the mass Talons and the mass Cyclone. It was incredibly boring and it was really unfair. So I don't think you should be even trying to encourage Druid of the Talon. I think it's fine without them even being that accessible. Besides, they can still be built and used for Fairy Fire purposes for 10 gold extra. It's not exactly a huge deal. Just don't re-encourage the mass. And if you reduce the cost by 10, then that does encourage the mass. Because that's 10 gold for every single Talon you get. And if you get 40, more Talons, you're going to get 10 less gold on all of them. Okay, now this is the biggest change by far, balance-wise. This is monumental. More for team games than it is for 1 versus 1, but even for 1 versus 1, it will still make a difference and a half. I'm telling you. You remember I did this? Let's have a quick look. I was going to make a demonstration. WTiiWarcraft, best heroes, worst heroes, something like that. Should pull up my video. Best and worst Warcraft 3 heroes. And now we go to our tier maker. So if you haven't watched that video, I highly suggest you watch it. It's a fun video. Go in and putting all of the heroes into their position as to where I would allocate them based on mostly 1 versus 1, their general usage. It's pretty hard to hit all the marks because obviously there's 2 versus 2 a range team, there's 4 versus 4 a random team, there's 3 for all, so they all serve different purposes, but generally speaking for 1 versus 1. Now, this is the new tier maker. I have created a new tier. This was previously the best hero in the game at God tier, but now there's a baby Jesus tier, and the Crypt Lord might well be up there. I don't know if I truly want to put him above the Death Knight, but it's more for comical purposes. He is certainly being upgraded from where he previously was on my tier maker to where he is currently now since this patch. So let's come back and look at the details. Impale can no longer be interrupted. Units knocked airborne can now take damage and be attacked. So what this does, I assume, is mean that when you cast Impale, you can't be Stormbolted like just a millisecond after the Impale has been cast, so the whole Impale doesn't get cast. Because if you've ever played with Crypt Lord, you may have noticed sometimes when he casts Impale, but gets stunned right afterwards, only a tiny sliver of the stunning Impale actually manages to reach out from him, not the whole line. So now, regardless of whether he gets stunned, as long as he gets that initial Impale off, it should reach all the way through to its initial destination. So units knocked airborne can also take damage, which means they're no longer invulnerable, because what you might not know is they're actually invulnerable when they're up in the air. So for like the 1 second they're up in the air, they cannot be hit. It's only when they land and the stun is applied that they can be attacked. But now they can be attacked whilst they're up in the air. So technically it's an extra second stun. 2 new data variables in the map. Airborne units vulnerable and uninterruptible. Now this is another big change. Carrion Beetle's mana cost increased from 30 to 45, but now spawns 2 instead of the 1. So maximum Beetles has actually been increased from 5 to 6. So you can get all 6 Beetles after 3 casts. 135 mana, I think. Instead of having to do it with 5, and in this case would be now 6 casts. So 30. So instead of 150 mana, it's like 135 mana, but you also get an extra Beetle. It's really good change. This is a big change, because one of the issues with Crypt Lord is when he comes out, you have to take him to a graveyard and then watch him slowly sort of utilize Carrion Beetles, because there's like a 5 to 6 second cooldown before he can cast another summon. And you imagine waiting, 15 seconds to get out the gate after your hero's already come out. That's not very good in competitive 1 versus 1. So now he's going to be a lot faster out the gate and a lot quicker and a lot more annoying. Developer's notes. The being whose might cannot be matched is getting a tune-up in this patch. Previously, the Impale ability was hard-coded to be interruptible and make units hit by it invulnerable while airborne. Unlike other channeled abilities, giving a move order to a command group containing the Crypt Lord casting Impale would cause it to move and cancel the ability. Yes, so you wouldn't attack the units because they wouldn't recognize they even exist because they're invulnerable. You can't interact with something that's invulnerable. This change removes this annoyance. Additionally, making airborne units vulnerable no longer causes units to lose auto-attack focus. Again, yeah, if you've issued a command, you will lose that command. You will have to reissue it upon the unit landing and then becoming stunned on impaled units. Airborne units are still untargetable with spells, though. That's interesting. I thought that wouldn't be the case. This was left in place out of an abundance of caution for introducing unintended bugs. Ha! So that's not for the reasons I thought. Because what I was going to say is when you impale something, I've seen it time and time again when a unit gets impaled, but the Death Knight also coils. But because the impale hits first and the unit goes airborne, it's invulnerable. So when the coil hits the invulnerable unit, it does no damage. So the undead is actually screwing himself over. Yes, you should argue that that is something he should have to counterplay, but it's an easy mistake to make. So the undead player should be paying more attention to when he's throwing that coil out, but you can lose a coil for nothing just because you impaled and you're like, oh, I just lost 300 damage if it's like a level 3 coil. So yeah, we're going to show off the impale in all of its glory. This is going to be a bit harder to demonstrate, but I'm going to try my best. First of all, we'll just take a look at impale because it's fun. So old versus new. We'll go with the 4-second stun because why not? So it should be like a 5-second stun then. So let's take a look at the first one, and we'll take a look at the units. So if we go here and go like that, hang on a second, I've got to find the place to impale, so something like that. And we'll take a look at his status. He's invulnerable, basically, during that. So you see when he's up in the air there, he was kind of invulnerable. We'll try that again to demonstrate that. Invulnerable, there it is. Whereas if you do impale now, no longer invulnerable. So I don't know the exact amount of seconds whilst he's up in the air, but I'd approximate it as about a 1 second. So 1. Maybe even like 1.25 or something. That's an extra 1.25 seconds. You can be hitting them and doing damage. So I could use a whole bunch of frostworms to kind of demonstrate this, but it's not going to be an accurate simulation. So I would honestly just say use your imagination with this. This bottom group, when they are stunned, can be hit by all of your units. So imagine you had like 4 or 5 Crypt Fiends, an Abomination, an Orb of Corruption on a Lich. You know, whilst that 1.25 seconds is going off, the top ones can't be hurt, the bottom ones can. So that's quite a lot of damage that you're actually doing, whilst that initial invulnerability could have been in place. So hopefully that makes that clear. Apologies if it doesn't. And we're going to take a look at the Crypt Lord, Carrion Beetle. So we've got Slappy over here. Actually, we might not use Slappy. I quite like Slappy. I'll leave Slappy. So let's get some Footmen. So this map is not for testing purposes, by the way, in case you was curious. For me, yes. But for you, maybe not. It's exclusive. I created this map a long time ago, and I've made some changes to it over the years. I need to continue making changes to it, but it's yeah, it helps me create some content for you guys, so hopefully you appreciate that. So we're going to kill off just these Footmen. It doesn't matter, just kill them all off. So we're going to put on the Carrion Beetles, old versus new. I hope I've done that right, even though that says 6 Beetles, but we'll see. It should be the way it is. We may as well just go with the ultimate level 3 again, because there's no real difference between level 1 or level 2 or level 3 Beetles, I don't think. So old is 30 mana and new is 45 mana. So let's just go with the level 3 and stick you over here, stick you here, and then so you can see the difference. So you've got 1 Beetle. What? Oh yeah, 2 Beetles. I thought there was like more there for a second. 4 Beetles. There you go. This guy's already at 6 Beetles. And this guy's only at 3. So hopefully that demonstrates just how much of a monumental change that is to the Crypt Lord. I honestly think he's going to go way up there in the tier list now. And I think that Spiked Carapace might not even get picked until level 6 onwards. I think there's a really good cause to have Carrion Beetles and Impale now. Before, you would normally just pick one or the other and then have Spiked Carapace. Or you might still go with Carrion Beetles and Impale if you felt like you was going to have a confident mana game. But now, you really can confidently go Impale and Carrion Beetles, because 45 mana for 2 of them is pretty damn good. Yes, you do still need mana, but that's pretty damn good. Anyway, that's Crypt Lord. Probably getting the biggest buff imaginable, to be quite frank with you. Very significant in many ways. So, like I was saying, that invulnerability thing, that's a big deal in 1 versus 1, when you got like 4 to 5 Crypt Fiends, yeah? And a couple of Abominations, and an Orbital Corruption Lich. Now imagine in a 4 versus 4 RT, when you've got like 5 Frostworms, 4 Chimeras, you know, 18 Crypt Fiends. So that's that extra 1 to 1.25 seconds where they can get attacks off. So it's such a huge deal, that is. I don't mind that change though, because it is annoying, that invulnerability. But I think to compensate, they might want to... My solution might be to reduce the cooldown, the stun duration. So instead of 4 seconds, it's 3 seconds. Do you see what I mean? Because you're still technically getting that stun. But I don't want to say that for sure, because that's up for pro players to decide. That's just my suggestion. Okay, so Death Knight. He actually got buffed. He didn't get nerfed. One of these days, I think Blizzard might be confident enough to reduce his movement speed from the Unholy Aura. Not significantly, but just enough. Even by 5% would help. I honestly think the Death Knight is by far the best hero in the game. Especially, obviously, for Undead, for the purposes that he serves. Animate Dead actually got its mana cost reduced from 135 to 125. Developers notes, we hear rather frequent feedback that this ability is one of the lowest tier ones. Directly buffing it too much at this time seemed unwise, as the Death Knight itself is quite core to Undead's best strategies, and buffing it further would reinforce this. However, we did it. We do think its mana cost should be reduced to at least a more appropriate with its perceived power level. It's not the biggest buff, but it is still a buff to essentially the strongest hero in the game, so I don't really get it, but there you go. I didn't actually have a Death Knight for demonstration purposes on this, but it's pretty self-explanatory. That's the one hero I didn't actually have to demonstrate, is that he's going to cost now 125 mana instead of 175 mana, so it's 50 mana less. Skeleton Warrior. Base hit points decrease from 190 to 180. Developers notes, this is aimed primarily at the human versus undead extreme early game. In this case, at the highest levels, every peasant killed during a fast expansion is extremely valuable, and battles around this are often won by inches rather than miles. Returning skeleton warriors to their previous health state should help humans and other races to a degree to stabilize better in the early game. I feel like this could be reduced even further. 10 is like 0.05% less health by going from 190 to 180. I don't think that's going to make that much of a difference, but maybe it's one extra less. It's one less hit from a footman, perhaps, so I can understand that purpose. The only other way to get around that would be to have skeleton warriors that are summoned from the Rod of Necromancy be a different unit, aka not a unit cast from the necromancers, so it doesn't nerf necromancers if you reduce their health. There'd be a separate unit, and they could have something like 150 health or something instead. So they're a nuisance, but they're not like really annoying where they just don't seem to die. Because obviously you get 2 at a time, and it doesn't take long before a Death Knight can have 4 or 6 of them up and running, and just constantly hitting your peasants and microing away. So anyway, let's move on to the next one. Ritual Dagger. Total hit points regenerated per charge increased from 125 to 175. Developers notes the Ritual Dagger has yet to really find a place in high-level undead build orders. Increasing its health regenerated should help it better compete with items like Scroll of Regeneration, especially since at 175 hit points and 2 charges per item, it would restore 350 hit points total. From a higher-level few, this change, in addition to the buff to Carrion Beetles, should make them an interesting pick for Crypt Lord first players. That's a good point, actually. Now Crypt Lord is even more enticing because of the way that this has even been buffed. So if Crypt Lord Beetles weren't good enough on their own, now Ritual Dagger actually gives them even more purpose. Whew. If I mean the skeletons from Book of the Dead, they are different. No, I don't mean the skeletons from Book of the Dead. I mean the skeletons from Rod of Necromancy versus the skeletons raised from the Necromancer, like I mentioned. I think they are the same unit. I might be wrong. Apologies if I am, but I think they are the same unit. So here we have the old Ritual Dagger and the new Ritual Dagger. We're going to hit the Beastmaster a couple of times. And then we're going to Ritual Dagger a skeleton. It doesn't matter which one. At the same time, roughly. And you're going to sort of see how quickly they get to 1,000 health. So, old versus new. Left versus right. Before versus after. It's very minor, the difference. You can see it's very minor, but it is still a difference. And it does affect multiple units, aka any units that are within the vicinity of that rod being used. The rod itself, I believe, costs 125 gold. So this does make it a little bit more valuable as opposed to being a rip-off, which it kind of was when it was at 125 health back. And it's going to be interesting to see how that plays with the Crypt Lord. Now, speaking of the Beastmaster, let's move on to him. Neutral. Summon Bear mana cost reduced from 125 to 100. Developers notes at the highest level of play, the Beastmaster has fallen off in usage over time. While we believe this is primarily due to changes in the meta, we want to give a boost to an ability that was underutilized even when Beastmasters roam freely. In particular, a level 2 Beastmaster starting at full mana that constantly uses their summon abilities when off cooldown would now be able to summon an additional Quill Beast when paired with Summon Quill Beast, or an additional Bear when paired with Summon Hawk. So yes, I think this is a good change. Beastmaster is basically bottom of the tier for me at the moment. He does serve a purpose in some metas, but very niche. Now, 125 for the old, 100 for the new. So this is going to make a much more significant damage for the early game Beastmaster. As you can see in the late game, not much of a difference between the mana pools. Early game, that extra 25 mana can make a big difference. So it makes it that the Quill Beast isn't the necessary go-to pick. I still think Quill Beast is going to be picked over the Bear, but I still think that's a significant difference that helps the Beastmaster to come in. So I'm happy with that change. I think that's fine. Pitlord. A unit inflicted by Doom now has its movement speed reduced by 50%. So added 2 new variables, movement speed factor and maximum creep level. Developers notes, the Pit Lord has come quite far in recent times, becoming something much more than just a super niche pick for styling an opponent. With looking over abilities, ultimate ability, we want to give this one a little bit more of a boost to reduce the ability of an opponent to run away and afflict a unit to somewhere more secluded or even favourable. We also surfaced a long hidden variable that controls the maximum creep level that can be afflicted with Doom. While this doesn't impact competitive multiplayer, it should help for custom game creators. Yes, that's true. They have done that. So by creating this new maximum creep level, it allows map makers to now set a creep level, whereas previously it was inbuilt. So you had it where abilities like Charm, Transmute, Doom, they won't work on creatures above level 6. Or 6 onwards. Above level 5, I guess. So now you can actually choose. That's for map makers. Not really a big deal for anyone else. Movement speed factor. Let's demonstrate that. So we'll take a skeleton or two. So old, which is left, versus new, which is right. So Doom and Doom, run you away. And you can see the difference between how far this one can get before he blows up and how far that one gets. So this one is going to be much closer to where you originally cast it, which means your army will be able to interfere with it, whereas this one you would have had to charge quite a distance, almost a screen difference. So a good change. Certainly nothing wrong with that. I think that plays into the ability better. So that's cool. Now we have the Firelord. Oh, I didn't put the Firelord in. Darn, that's a nuisance. But I do have him over here. Hopefully... I won't have the old versus new. They'll both be the same. So I might have to demonstrate that afterwards. Or I can replace the map and demonstrate the Firelord. I think I might have to do that. Because I did have him. So bear with me. I will have to exit this, unfortunately. Because I did miss out the Firelord. Also missed out the Death Knight. But the Death Knight was fairly insignificant. So here's my map. So if I come over and I take a look at the neutral, and we come to Firelord, which will be the current version. So we were roughly around this point, and we have the custom. So I should have an old version of the Firelord. And I guess, I don't know if I actually did have an old version of the Death Knight. I don't remember. Yes, I did, I guess. Well, let's chuck him in there as well, since we're at it. And the current modern version of the Death Knight. So we need to save this and then go back into Warcraft 3 in the public test realm. And then we can load that map up. You can, for some reason, you can't test the map from the map editor in the PTR. At least I couldn't. It would require me to log in, except the login wouldn't even be available. So I essentially couldn't do it. So the easiest way is for me to load up the game and then go into the game and create the map. How are you enjoying this so far? I have no idea how long I've been going. This could even be like half an hour at this point, and there's still quite a way to go. It has been a lot of changes with this patch, and I really wanted to try to talk about them as quickly as possible, but whilst demonstrating them, and it does take some serious time to do this. So once again, if somehow you've got to this point in the video and you haven't thumbs up, please do so. It does help out a lot, and share the video, because this, I hope, is going to help a lot of people understand what the patch notes are doing. And people did appreciate it the last time I did a patch note video, and I talked essentially not only about the abilities but also demonstrating what it is that the differences were. So let's get the level 6. I don't think my commands work. I haven't used this map in so long, so I'm just going to pull you two over here. We're going to get a bunch of footies just to demonstrate the animate dead. Not that it's even really that necessary, but that's good enough. Off you go. You come here, you go there, you go here, you go here, and die. Stop taking it out on the buildings. It's not their fault. Oi, I said stop it. There we go. Let's kill you guys. So, old animate dead, which is 175 mana, versus new animate dead, 125 mana. So 217 mana, 268. Not really even worth bothering to show off, but there you go, it is what it is. I'll even just get rid of him because Death Knight's too overpowered. Now we've got Volcano, so we're going to demonstrate the changes here. We're going to replenish the health on these buildings because we're going to demonstrate Volcano in a moment. So old versus new. Let's give them experience. Do you mind? Okay, so old Volcano. I hope that's the old Volcano. I might have not changed the tooltip on it. If it is, and it isn't, let me double check. Yep. Okay, 1 second. So, abilities, units, Firelord. See, these maps and these videos don't just create themselves. Yeah, he has got the old Volcano. It's just I didn't change one of the names of it. So, old at the top versus new at the bottom. So let's try this. And let's Volcano for about there. So we're going to try to Volcano in the same place each. Dash cam. So get ready. Volcano. Volcano. So the new one should do significantly more damage to buildings. But bear in mind that these do damage based on where they're landing as well. If they land further away from their target, they're going to do half the damage. But the new one is much quicker, does a lot more damage. The old one goes on for ages, man. Look at that. Really slow and clunky. I can't believe how long that's still going. That's almost like a bug or something. What is that? That can't be right. Well, I'm not sure if I've made a mistake on that, but you can kind of get a general gist as to how fast they both behave. I think that is actually accurate. The old one might do more damage, like the Farsight and the Tornado, all these kind of abilities that have been buffed. The old might be technically more damage, but it lasts so long. So the new changes are definitely better, take my word for it. Definitely better. Even if they don't do quite as much damage in the long run, you are not... It's not that big a difference for the amount of time that you waste standing there, okay? You do almost much more damage just with right clicks. So now, that was the Firelord. So did I read over the abilities? I apologize. I'm going to just read them again, just in case I didn't. Firelord, volcano eruption waves decrease from 8 to 5. So you get 5 waves instead of 8. However, the interval is now every 3 seconds instead of 5 seconds, so it's a lot quicker. There's more chance to stun, for example, because they're coming out much quicker. Increase the building damage factor from 2 to 3, so obviously a lot more damage, and it no longer affects friendly units and structures, which is another big buff. So you can no longer hurt your own units from this. Developers notes, we believe that the main issue with Volcano is that it's too unreliable and too balanced around its maximum damage output, which is unrealistic for a channeled ultimate. Indeed, these changes reduce the overall damage potential of the Volcano in exchange for being much more reliable and hitting much faster. Removing the ability for it to affect friendly units should also make Volcano more viable in combat. No more praying to Ragnaros for the flaming bolters to miss one's own units. Whew! Okay, so we're getting there. We're getting there. We're almost done with all the heroes. There's one more to go. But that is a good change, and there's one thing to talk about, is all of these durations of these ultimates in particular, the channeled ones, seem to be, not all of them, but most of them have been reduced, but at the same time almost as powerful. So they're reduced in their duration, but they're almost as powerful, which makes them more fun and cool to play, because you can do them quickly and get out, which they still take a while to cast because they're channeled, so they should be, and they can be punished because they go on a while, but not to the degree where you have one that can last 40 seconds and one that can last 20 seconds. If you get stunned on one that can last 40 seconds, you're losing out on so much more damage than one that lasts 20 seconds but does almost the same amount of damage. Do you see what I mean? So Sea Witch, speaking of which, Tornado, random wonder behavior removed. So that means that when you place the tornado down, it doesn't act like a critter, in the sense that it sort of walks off randomly. You now have complete control over where you direct that tornado. Mana cost reduced from 200 to 125, so this is huge. That's 75 mana, quite significant indeed. Duration reduced from 40 seconds to 20 seconds, so that's half the duration. However, the closed building damage per second increased from 50 to 100, so double the damage when it's close. Far building damage per second increased from 7 to 14, so only doing 14 damage if it's quite far away, but that's still twice as much as the 7. So again, like I'm saying, 40 seconds versus 20 seconds, but it's basically the same damage. So it's a huge buff. Developers notes, much like the other channeled ultimates in this update, we believe a main issue with the ability was that getting value from the spell took too long compared to its opportunity cost. So the damage has been increased and duration decreased overall. The mana cost was also reduced, as the Sea Witch can be one of the more intensive mana users, which could greatly crowd out the ability to cast this ultimate spell. Yeah, generally speaking, even in 4 versus 4 RT, which you think it would be really good as a crowd controlling spell. There are certain moments when I've used it, but there's also certain moments when I've just rather use Fort Lightning and continue to right-click with her, even in big team fights. In general, players should always feel in charge of their units and that their units will follow their orders to the letter. The random wonder, while visually rather cool, goes against this principle and generally made the spell require too much micromanagement when compared to the payoff it produced. So, cool. Very cool. I think a lot of these changes are really heading in the right direction, honestly, is the general scope of what I would say. Generally, very, very good changes. Unfortunately, we lost a farm there, didn't we? So what we're going to do is we're going to get a peasant and we're going to take him over. We're going to put in Warp 10 and we're going to build a couple of farms here just to demonstrate. Hello there, nighttime. This is why I don't like nighttime. Oops. And change those to 2. And your job is done, so you can go over and talk to Slappy. Slappy might be the real MVP of this video. So Sea Witch old and Sea Witch new. So Tornado versus Tornado. So a similar deal. We're going to cast Tornado approximately smack bang in the middle. The old one I'm going to have to control though, because it will consistently try to move away, so we can compare the damage. So let's get going. Send you slightly further back. Gives me a little bit more control for time. So here we go. Old, top, new, bottom. You can actually just put the thing on hold position so it doesn't wander, and that's perfectly fine. So the old one lasts for 40 seconds, new one lasts for 20 seconds, and look at that damage. Whoa, boy, that's crazy. Whoa, Tornado is serious competition for Earthquake and Volcano right now. That's some serious threat. Naga Sea Witch is already like a top tier hero. But now, being able to cast that quite quickly, you could go into someone's base and almost force a town portal. If they don't town portal, they're going to lose a lot of structures. That's a huge difference. If I've calculated that correctly, which I hope I have, because I just simply put in the values, that is how it should perform. So, wow. Huge, huge buff. Let's take a look at some more notes. Blue Dragon Whelp. Blue Drake and Blue Dragon added a passive icon indicating that the unit has an attack that slows targets. Unit tooltip updated to mention that these units have a frost attack. Developers notes, this is a quality of life change. We want to clarify that these units indeed have a frost attack. So if we came over to here, you can see that these units should, if I can locate them, there we go, frost attack, like the frostworm, frost attack, frost attack. So that's better for new players that don't necessarily realize just how powerful the frost dragon is, because it does have that slow, and that's going to be playing a part later on in the video. So let's have a look at the items. Potion of Greater Mana reduced, restored reduced from 300 to 250. That's a great change, because that was a really powerful item, but it's not reduced enough that you're like, oh man, now it's crap. It's just 50 mana, but it's a significant 50 mana. That's going to play an important purpose, and the next one to talk about is Potion of Mana. Mana restored reduced from 150 to 125. So that's the one that you can purchase from a shop, a player shop. Gold cost reduced from 200 to 150. So it's 25% cheaper, but I don't know what that is, but it's only about... Hang on a second, maybe we can do this. Should we dangerously do math? I did do math live before. Should be safe to do it. So you do 150, take away 125. That leaves you with 25. Divide the 25 by 150. So it's 16%. So yeah, it's about 16.66 recurring, etc. % less mana, but 25% less cost. So I think that makes the item more accessible, better in general, because you're going to get your value for money. However, it stops it being too strong in the late game for certain heroes with level 3 abilities that utilize Potion of Mana to do a ton of damage. So developers notes, we want to rein in the power of the Potion of Greater Mana and at the same time experiment a bit with the regular Potion of Mana. Currently seen as an emergency item, this changes make it slightly more gold efficient and aligns its gold price with that of a Potion of Healing, making them more of a direct comparison. So very good changes, and we're just going to demonstrate those changes with the Pit Lord. Sassy Pit Lord. So here we have a Pit Lord. We've got the old mana potion, we've got the new one. So if we use a Rain of Fire and a Howl of Terror, and then another Rain of Fire each. So, you know, you're getting really low to your mana. And we'll use another Howl of Terror as well whilst we're at it. So we're getting like almost on no mana. And then we'll take this. He gets all of his mana back. He doesn't get quite all of his mana back. So there's not that much of a difference. However, where this is really a bit of an impact is essentially a manipulative thing in the game, which I don't think is going to be enough of a nerf to reduce the fun of it, but it's still going to be worth doing. There's an item called the Pendant of Mana, and I don't know where I put it, but I can always go buy one. I think I had it on Mountain Kings in a previous time, so I'm just going to go buy that right now, and then I'll come back to you in a second. So you got permanent level 3 item, which is a Pendant of Mana. Leave the castle alone, or level 5. Permanent level 6. Sorry. So here we have these two items. Now there's a trick that is used on the higher level for competitive players, and that involves essentially manipulating their mana restoration through Pendant of Mana. So what we'll do is we'll drop one there for equals sake, drop one there, old versus new. So we're going to take a Greater Mana Potion, hold. Now what we do is we use our abilities again. I guess the way to demonstrate this would be to, yeah, just use the abilities again. Get yourself to like almost no mana. So if you had a Pendant of Mana, when you use this item, right, you get 322 out of 565. Okay? When you've got that item on. However, what you do is you drop the item, and then you take the Potion of Greater Mana. I've gone through so many of them though. You take it, and then you restore. I'm starting to flip out now. And then you pick up the pendant, because you'll get a lot more value. You will basically go up to 565. So I guess what I really should be doing here is showing the difference. So, hang on a second. Between the old and the new. That's what I wanted to do, actually. Apologies. So we got the old versus the new, and they both got a pendant of energy or a pendant of mana. We'll just do the pendant of mana because it's the most significant change. And it's the biggest difference. So they both basically got like no mana each. So what they're going to do is they're going to take this each, and then they're both going to pick up the pendant of energy. He's going to have 460 out of 465. He's going to have 488 out of 565. So do you notice the difference there? The difference is that I picked up the wrong item. There we go. The difference really is that he will have effectively all of his mana back. He'll go straight up to 565 mana, whereas this one won't quite so quickly go up to 565 mana with the Potion of Greater Mana. There's got to be an easier way to explain that mechanic. Honestly, I've done a terrible job of it, but yeah. I know this Frostworm's causing trouble. He's distracting me all the time. I can see that in the corner of my eye. So yeah, basically the idea is it won't have too much of an impact when it comes to chugging a potion and then picking up a Pendant of Mana, but it will still nerf that a little bit, but not enough that it reduces the fun enough, but enough that it actually does stop it from being overpowered, because a lot of lower level players don't know how to do that, but a high level player does. And what it means is if a higher level player takes the potion and then puts the pendant, so he drops the pendant of mana deliberately, takes the potion, then picks up the pendant of mana, he effectively gets an extra 150 plus mana, roughly around that mark. That's a huge amount of mana. A lower level player doesn't do that, but a high level player will do that, giving them an extra couple of coils or whatnot, which makes a big impact. So we've really spent a long time on that because I don't know how to explain that properly. Red Drake egg removed from default level 5 charged drop list. However, the blue Drake egg is now a level 5 charged item that is new. So summons a blue Drake for 180 seconds, so basically it replaces. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the Red Drake, and then we're going to bring over our sassy Pit Lord here because we need a cooldown. And we're going to use the Blue Drake. So, Red Drake versus Blue Drake. Blue Drake does a little bit less damage, but he has that frost attack. And this is more in line with, like, you know, the Rock Golem or the Fellhound having the Mana Burn or the Hell Boulder. It's just an ability to sort of CC. I'm starting to lose my voice here. Give me a moment. Never talked so much in my life. Okay, Talisman of the Wild, removed from default level 5 charged item drop list, but it's replaced by Idol of the Wild, a new level 5 charged item for Firbolg Tracker for 180 seconds. So we're going to look at the difference of these two. So Talisman of the Wild, the old, which is a cooldown of 20 seconds, and there's 3 charges. This is just a one and done. So you might effectively get more value from the Talisman of the Wild, but I think players would prefer to have a Firbolg Tracker over the Talisman of the Wild, because you very slowly, clunkily have to plop them out, and whilst they effectively have more health and potentially more damage, I don't think they're going to be preferred for high level players. I think this is a good change. Just a one and done. Fairy Fire is a practical, mechanical use that allows players to keep an eye on their opponent. They could send this off to get Fairy Fire, and then they know for 30 seconds what their opponent is doing. So there's good stuff there for player interactivity. Developer's note. Among the level 5 charged items, there are clearly 2 less desired items among them, the Talisman and the Red Drake Egg. In both cases, the summon units provide only a bit of damage and some tanking ability, while still providing the opponent experience for their destruction. We want to keep the coolness of having items that call forth creatures, but change what was brought in. With the Blue Drake providing a frost breath attack and the Firbolg Tracker bringing Fairy Fire, these 2 units now align with the Rock Golem and Fellstalker by removing utility in addition to damage and tanking. So yeah, it's all about utility, which is what they're providing. So that's that change. Now we've got a big change here. Scroll of Restoration hit points reduced from 300 to 550. While the Talisman and the Red Drake Egg may have been seen as the weakest, the Scroll of the Restoration is undoubtedly the strongest charged item for level 5. This is especially true for team games. Reducing the healing it provides down to be equal to the Scroll of Healing should help bring it down in power level in comparison to other items. Yeah, this was a needed change. It's not like most players were able to get their hands on a Scroll of Restoration, but believe me, the old one is utterly insane. I don't think I created... did I create an old one? Yeah, old versus new. 150 versus 150. Well, 300 versus 150. I didn't change the tooltips on everything. So how can I demonstrate this? Let's see. What you need really is a Crypt Lord to demonstrate this for you. Mr. Crypt Lord will be able to demonstrate this. Oops. Can't impale the unit though. So you can't impale a unit that's currently stunned. I didn't know that. Interesting. But anyway. So let's use the old versus the new. So these are about 340 health. This doesn't heal them because they're player 2. So I messed up. But basically, I don't even need to show that. It's just an extra 150 health, but it's monumental. It is huge, trust me. That 300 health for all units nearby is massive, okay? But I think I need to continue because honestly, the longer I go on, the more mistakes I'm going to make. Just trust me, that is a huge, huge difference. That's literally half the amount of health it used to give. So that tells you how strong it is. Scroll of Animate Dead removed from default level 6 charge drop list, but it's replaced by the Scepter of Mastery. It's just a level 6 charged item and it takes permanent control of an enemy unit with a range of 601 charge. Cannot be used on heroes or creeps above level 5. So effectively, it's an item that is the Dark Ranger's ultimate ability, Charm. So if we take a Pit Lord and we pick up a Scepter of Mastery, see, there's the old Scroll of Animate Dead, which no one wanted. It was crap. You would basically just sell it. Thank you, Phaedric, for the sub.
Months of looking at patch notes with Mr. Butterfly.
Mr. Butterfly, that's what they call me. So you could effectively do this. If you had an enemy Frostworm, you, now with this item, can do that. And that now belongs to you. And obviously any creeps that are level 5 or below. So this Drake, for example, you couldn't take. But level 5 creeps and below you can get. But obviously first as a player, if you take away their Frostworm, that's huge. There is another item that is similar, which we'll go over. It's the Transmute one, but it's not quite as good, but it's still really good. So Scroll of Resurrection has been removed, which was actually not a terrible item, but in 4 versus 4 RT, most people go air, and you can't resurrect air units because they don't leave a corpse. Removed from default level 6, and it's replaced by Scepter of Avarice. I would prefer the Scepter name to be changed to something else of Avarice, because I'm just thinking from like back to Warcraft's point of view, or like a Shoutcaster. It's better to have a difference in the pronunciation of words, so it's clearer for the listener to indicate the power of the item. A Scepter of Mastery is a lot more powerful than a Scepter of Avarice. It's just such a small thing to say, but obviously you can hear the difference between Avarice and Mastery, but I think if you just called it something else like Rod of Avarice or something, it just instantly changes the difference. But anyway, that's such a small nitpick. Is a new charge level 6 item that instantly kills an enemy unit with a range of 601 charge. Gain gold equal to 75% of its cost. So can it be used? So once again, let's just take a Frostworm again for an example. So we've got a Frostworm over here. He's happy. Not for long though. So the old Resurrection is gone. The Scepter of Avarice is new, so it's basically a transmute, as you can see. So a Frostworm costs 185 gold and like something, 70 wood or something. So you get 289 gold back. You don't get the lumber though, but you get the gold. It's still good. I'm not going to argue with that. It's 289 gold, but then again, you can sell the item for 350 gold. So you'd have to wait for a Frostworm to be on the board. I know the power of it is that it effectively removes a unit from your opponent, which could be a big power play. You know where it's the biggest power play? Is this actually a biggest power play on something like an Orc Kodo? If a Kodo ate your unit, if we take a Kodo and we, say for example, eat this skeleton and then change the Kodo to 2. And the same goes for items, by the way. If you use that charm or this transmute ability on a creature that has an item drop, it will drop the item and you'll get the creature. Oh. Okay, I can't test that then because the creature popped out, but I'm not sure how that's going to play then. But effectively, you might even lose the item actually if the creature pops out. I'm not exactly sure how that plays. I apologize. I can't test that right now. But you might even lose your creature if you use Transmute on the Kodo. It might kill that Kodo and your creature in it. So I'm not too sure what the value of that item is other than just removing a unit from your opponent. As with level 5 charge items, there were 2 that seemed weaker with the others. Level 6 charged items. So these scrolls only really worked when a battle was well underway with Losses Mountain. This means that their worth was hard to gauge, while the summon units have far more flexibility. Keeping with the theme of charged items on this tier being ultimate abilities, we decided to bring an analogue of Transmute and Charm, which should be more directly comparable to bringing in a summon unit by instantly denying one of your opponent's units. Inferno Stone drop level increased from level 6 charge to level 7 artifact. I don't like this change. Please do not do this change. There's a reason for that, and I'll explain it. But Inferno Stone is now a level 7 artifact. What is a level 7 artifact? A level 7 artifact is a Claws of Attack plus 15, a Kellen's Dagger of Escape, and an Orb of Frost. Each of these items are insanely cool and really awesome to build up your hero with. And Inferno Stone, whilst it's cool, is just a summon. It doesn't do any benefits for your hero. So I don't like that being in this same item list, because that means that if you kill a creature on Market Square in the corner, for example, you want a Claws of Attack plus 15, you want a Kellen's Dagger of Escape, you want an Orb of Frost, but you might get an Infernal, which isn't bad at all. Like, don't get me wrong, an Infernal could be really, really good, but for the fun factor of building up a really strong hero with like ridiculous damage, that Infernal is going to be like, I got an Infernal instead of a Claws of Attack plus 15. Yeah, not as cool. A Tome of Power is a level 8 artifact item, Nick. So a level 8 artifact item is in the middle of Market Square. That could be a Mask of Death, a Crown of Kings plus 5 to all stats, or a Tome of Power, which increases your hero's level instantly by 1. So ideally you use that at like the highest level possible. That's okay, Nick. I wasn't too sure myself, but I tested it and found out earlier. So yeah, please don't. I don't know. Just don't. Well, honestly, I would rather you remove the Inferno Stone than have it interfere with the other level 7 artifacts. So either change it to like a level 7 charge drop, which I don't think actually exists in the game. If we take a look at the Warcraft 3 and we go to the items and we go to level 7 and we go to charged, there is no charge. So just bump it up to a level 7 charge. It could be its own thing, for example. And then if the player wants, I know there's no other comparables, so maybe create some other comparables like a dragon or something. A dragon would be too powerful, but you get the idea. I just don't want it interfering with the... Because you can see now, you could get this item instead of these 3. So, yeah, I don't like that personally for me. Engraved Scale is a new charge level 6 item that summons a blue dragon spawn overseer for 180 seconds with 1 charge. So that is essentially replacing the Inferno Stone. So let's take a look at that. Oh wow, this guy's really powerful actually. Yeah, that's pretty significant. So an Infernal is like one of the top tier units because it's essentially immune to damage for the most part. Not purely damage, but you know, spell immune and resistant skin. It's very hard to deal with. This guy may not be quite as good as an Infernal, but in the control of a player with Brilliance Aura or something, he could be really devastating. He's providing an aura, he's got a chance to avoid attacks, and Breath of Frost is nice for doing some damage to buildings. So, and units as well. So that's a pretty good addition. I think that's a pretty good addition. If he was going to replace the Infernal with something, I think that's pretty good. And it's interesting because he's got abilities rather than the Infernal just being an auto attacker. So yeah, I think honestly just remove the Infernal and just not have him interfere with the level 7 artifacts. That's my personal opinion. Developers note, often cited as one of the most powerful items in the game, and often the focal reason of level 6 charge items being too imbalanced for 131 is the Infernal Stone. We want to try moving it up a tier while replacing it with a new summon item to see if we can encourage higher usage of this category of items in map making while balancing out current team and free-for-all maps that utilize it. The Blue Dragon Spawn Overseer acts as a kind of defensive parallel to the Firbolg Ursa Warrior by providing endurance aura and having a passive evasion ability built in. It doesn't have endurance aura, it has devotion aura. Built of Breath of Frost also gives it a good area of effect option similar to other summons in this tier. Okay, so there's a few little bits here. We've gone over the main parts, but there's a little bit more to go. Mostly the mercenary camps, which we're going to take a look at some new units that players can play with, and we're going to look at their power levels. So the video is still going to keep going. Again, if you haven't thumbs up, then what are you doing? Thumbs up, share this video. Helps a lot, really does. Non-ladder, transportation ship. So no longer unloads instantly, now has a 0.5 second delay, yada yada yada. This is just basically changing how the transportation ship will work in custom games or even campaign games. Pretty insignificant for most of us, even me who plays it. I'll just read the developer's notes. While it is not used in any current ladder maps, we want to update this unit for nautical inclined map makers. In a number of community tournaments, there have been some promising usage of ships as a map feature. Yeah, kind of. I've seen like a 1 versus 1 map that utilizes it, but I don't think you're ever going to be able to bring ships in. Maybe, but they could use some tuning. I guess they're trying to look for a way to include ships. The current states for the transportation ship are geared towards usage in single-player modes, which makes it a bit too overtuned as an option for competitive multiplayer. The primary change here, however, is that all units will unload one at a time rather than all at once, which gives the ship users too much advantage and pull off aggressive maneuvers. It really looks like they're trying to line this up for competitive play. Really looks like it. Especially for landing near an opponent's base with siege damage units. Mercenary camp updates. Here we go. Okay. Another swig of water. Another area where we want to address within this balance patch is opening up a bit more map design options for our map making community. Mercenary camps provide a way to both adjust how matchups play out as well as provide our extra map variety. However, only the Lordaeron Summer camp has been widespread use in the competitive scene. We have looked at all of the mercenary camps and adjusting their unit offerings to bring them more in line with the Lordaeron Summer mercenary camp, while also offering different options of units abilities provided. Additionally, many units had their costs and availability time adjusted. We're trying out having 2 availability times to unify the mercenary camps a bit by reducing the amount of player numbers players have to memorize. Short 120 seconds, medium 220 seconds, oh my goodness, long 440 seconds. It's likely that further adjustments to unit offerings of the unit cost availability will be needed, so we are interested in player and map maker thoughts on these changes. Okay, blimey. So this is pretty self-explanatory, but we're going to go over this. Mercenary camp composition. So Lordaeron Summer, unchanged. That's the most powerful one, which I think players are most comfortable with. All of the units are serving a purpose. You've got the Troll Shadow Priest, you've got the Troll Berserker for damage, you've got the Mud Golem for utility, slowing, you've got the Ogre for obviously just tanking, and the Priest again for the heal and the Abolish magic. So Cityscape Dalaran is unchanged, they're happy with that. Underground has been changed onwards, so Underground and Dungeon. So if you see a slash dungeon, it means that they share the same units that are sold. So now you have the Frost Revenant. So let's take a look at that. I can show you the old units as well for comparison purposes. So that's the Lordaeron, that's the Cityscape and Dalaran. So those are fine. This is essentially the old versus the new. So the Frost Revenant is a new addition. And it costs 255 gold. So take that into account. So we're going to purchase the Burning Archer, Kobold, Wild King, and the Frost Revenant. So Burning Archer, solid enough. I think this is going to take too long if I try to give you like an analysis as to how each of these play for their costs. I think that's probably another video, to be quite frank with you, but this is just to give you an indication. I'm just going to click through them and you can get a rough idea. He has Blizzard, so again, they're just introducing utility, so that's cool. Let's go back to the next one. Ashen Vale. Old is this Satyr, Shadow Dancer, Firbolg Shaman, and Thunder Lizard. Now they have Satyr, Shadow Dancer, Dark Troll Berserker, Dark Troll, Shadow Priest, and Giant Wolf. So let's take a look at that. Where did I put you is the real question. So we've gone over you. Now we've got the old. So let's do the old so you can get an idea. So you got the Firbolg, Shadow Dancer, which is the only unit that got to stay, is the Shadow Dancer. And we'll get these ones as well. So let's take a look. You're going to lose the Shaman with the Rejuvenation, which is actually really useful. And he's a very powerful character. Maybe they removed it because he's almost too powerful in a way. Like, that's a free heal for 400 health, and you get a couple of them. So for 255 gold, that's almost just worth buying alone, let alone he does respectable damage. And he can regenerate that mana. So I think that's probably for balance purposes. Thunder Lizard, I never thought was that good. He's kind of clunky. He has to get close to do slam. He costs quite a lot. 365 gold, 150 lumber. So I think he's just removed because he's annoying. Curse is very strong. He's got really good damage. So he's like a better version of a Banshee, basically. So 200 gold Banshee. Probably worth picking up, to be quite frank with you. So a worthwhile pick. Then you've got the Berserker and the Priest, basically the same sort of deal. Priest is a little weak, does not have Abolish Magic, just has the straight up heal, but has pretty respectable damage, but very low health. So pretty pricey, but not as costly as the Forest Troll Priest. Probably will still be picked up by players because heal is still very valuable in the early game. Berserker, obviously really respectable damage. And the Wolf, not so good damage, but it does have the critical strike. So it's like 215 gold is actually really good. I think 215 gold for an 18 to 21 damage, 550 health is pretty reasonable. It's slightly more expensive than a Grunt, but obviously it's faster than a Grunt, and it's got crit, so it's going to do more damage because it attacks quicker as well. So I think you lose some health, but you get some movement and critical strike. I guess I am doing a bit of an analysis here. I can't say those two words quickly. An analysis. It can't be done. It's impossible. Okay, moving on. Barons. Old. Centaur, Outrider, Harpy Rogue, Razormane, Medicine Man, and Harpy Windwitch. Now we have the Centaur Outrider, Quillboar, Hunter, Centaur Archer, and Harpy Windwitch. We're losing the Razorman. That's the healing ward, and that is the Quill Beasts. So you no longer have this character. I think he could be a bit too strong for 1 versus 1 purposes, because you're getting a couple of Feral Spirits for just 100 mana, and those can be very annoying and useful for creeping. Ah, they're attacking this over here. Stop it. Okay. So I can understand removing him if it's for balance purposes. It's a bit of a shame because we won't have him in 4 versus 4 RT anymore, because he can be useful for that. But obviously this is more aimed towards 1 versus 1. Centaur Outrunner, very solid unit. Similar to the Wolf there, like the Grunt. Very good pickup. Cheap as well, 195 gold. Fast, mobile, does a good job, just doesn't have the crit. What else did we get? So we lost... I think we lost a rogue. So we lost the Harpy Rogue, which is kind of a non-character because very low health, mere kind of damage because it's average attack speed. So not really a huge loss there. But we picked up a Quillboar Hunter, I think, in replacement, which is essentially the same sort of unit, but grounded and range, but with evasion. I think it might not be that much of a big change. Perhaps not that big a deal. Not much to say there, really. Not much to say in between that. And Harpy Wind Witch, which is the same with Fairy Fire. It's basically probably removed because it's almost the same as the Harpy Rogue. So you just get a ranged ground character. So I can understand that change. So, moving on. We have Black Citadel. So, old was the Fell Beast, Draenei Disciple, Voidwalker, Draenei Darkslayer. New is the Blood Fiend, Draenei Disciple, Voidwalker, Skeletal Orc, Grunt. I missed the Archer, did I? Centaur Archer. Sorry, apologies. Where's the Centaur Archer? Oh yeah, I did. He doesn't have the Syrian, but he's got, you know, okay damage, 300 health. He's like an Archer to a degree. For 150 gold. Because he's an instant pickup, I think that's kind of reasonable. He's nothing special, but if you was at here, you're instantly getting this unit. So you could pick up these two for a reasonable price, about 350-ish gold or whatever. And you've got like a range and a melee unit. I wouldn't advise picking him up unless you just want to give yourself more of a boost. And he is quick, of course. So, moving on. Where was I? Okay, yeah, so we went over the Black Citadel / Outland. So, that's Outland. They're the same damn thing, basically. So, you got the old versus the new. So, we're losing the Fell Beast, which is 14 to 15 chaos damage and 390 health. But we're gaining the Blood Fiend. So the cost is 155 versus 240. But the Blood Fiend's got some beastly damage and cleave, which is kind of really cool. So I think that's a fine change. Makes it a bit more interesting. I think we've lost the Disciple. No, we haven't actually. We've got to keep the Disciple. So he's got pretty good damage, lowish health, and a heal. So he's a pretty good pickup, 195 gold. He's not actually too different to the Dark Troll Shadow Priest, and I was saying that he wasn't that good, so actually, yeah, maybe I'll reframe my thoughts on that. There's the Voidwalker. We get to keep him. He's an interesting character, ranged, but quite short-ranged. He has cold arrows, but I think the short range is one of the things that is going to make him a little bit too easy to pick off in 1 versus 1 games. If Blizzard want to make him more of an accessible pick, I would honestly think for 245 gold, you're going to want to increase his actual initial range. If you're worried about the cold arrow being too strong, you can always reduce the effect of it in terms of the duration. But I think he needs to be knocked up to at least 550 range, because 450 range is really bad. Now, we lose the Draenei Darkslayer, who has Immolation, which is kind of meh. And 19 to 21 damage with 525 health, and replace him with an Orc Champion. So the cost difference is 260 to 40 or 300 gold, so really good for the Orc Grunt. So he's a fast attacking Orc Grunt, so he's going to do more damage, probably the same sort of damage as a Orc Berserker, but with faster attack speed, but 850 health. He's not actually too far off a Grunt, is he? But he costs 300 gold, and you get him instantly. So he's like an extra 100 gold, but he's like an upgraded Grunt, tier 2 Grunt. So that's pretty good. Can't argue with that one. I quite like that. Felwood. Old Murloc Flesh Eater. Well, you have the Flesh Eater here. So we're replacing the Sludge Finger with the Monstrosity and the... adding in a Spitting Spider and keeping a Satyr. No, we're replacing the Soul Stealer with a Shadow Dancer. Okay. So, let's take a look at that. Felwood, you got the Flesh Eater. You get that on both camps. It's basically a ghoul with a bit more health, bit more damage, and cannibalize. So it's actually really cool. And it's only 140 gold. It's pretty damn solid. Self-sufficient. Cannibalize. Now, let's take a look at the additional unit that you get. It's called a Spitting Spider. It's basically a slightly worse assassin, which costs 260 gold 30, or the Spider costs 235 gold 30. So it has good range, good damage, envenom weapons, and reasonable health for a ranged unit. It's not a bad pickup. You would probably want to buy that, but technically an assassin is better, which is why they mention in the patch notes that the assassin actually has an increased time before you can buy it, because it is a ridiculously strong unit for its cost. Now, we're going to get a Shadow Dancer instead of the Soul Stealer. So the Shadow Dancer is the curse one. It's a kind of a shame to lose the Soul Stealer, but I think that's for balance purposes because this guy is really good. 320 gold is a lot, but he's got mana burn and it's 100. That's a level 2 demon hunter basically. That you can use a 50 mana burn with a 400 mana pool. So I think he's completely been removed for balance purposes. So either you nerf him or you just remove him as an option. So I think that's probably a good change. Whilst he is going to be fun and powerful for someone like me to play, he's very annoying to fight against for how powerful he is. So you lose the Flinger, 255 gold for a 320 gold monstrosity. Basically, the only difference is one more damage, different armor type, and a lot more health. But otherwise, a bit more mana and slow. It's the same damn thing. So not much difference there. Okay. Ice Crown Glacier. Old. Barbed Arachnid. Blue Dragon Spawn Meddler. Magnetor Warrior. Polar Phobe. I could have split this into like 5-6 different videos, man. New. Ice Troll Berserker. Blue Dragon Spawn Warrior. Tusker Healer. Unbroken Darkweaver. This is crazy. Okay, so here we go. That's the old. You lose the Arachnid, which is a ranged unit that can burrow. He's very low health. Yeah, kind of okay damage. Not normally worth picking up, but he's very cheap. He's kind of a cute little thing. Meddler, I think you get to keep that. No, the Meddler gets replaced by the Warrior. So the Warrior is just a stronger version of the Meddler, basically. The Magnetar Warrior's gone now. So you're getting this guy instead of that guy. And he's got spell immunity, so I think that's removed for balance purposes. And you get the Berserker, which is always good. We know the Berserker, solid range damage. And you get the Darkweaver instead of the Shaman. So you're losing the Frost and the Abolish Magic with the ranged for Unholy Frenzy. I think the Shaman's pretty cool. You could probably replace the Berserker with a Shaman. However, I guess they want to have a troll in there because the Lordaeron Summer tile set is so popular with the trolls, and it seems to be quite good for balance purposes. Oh, we got the Tusker Healer, 215 gold and 10, so it's a bit more than the Shadow Priest. I think it has a bit more damage, but it's melee. I don't think it should cost as much as that for a melee character, because it's going to get itself killed so easily versus the Troll Priest. If you look at the difference. He's got more damage and more health, I'll give you that, but he's also going to get himself killed so easily, being in the front. I think 200 gold is more than enough. 205 gold if you really want to go that far, but I think the ranged practicalities of the priest is better. Oh, God. Yeah. Lordaeron Summer. Lordaeron Fall, unchanged. Lordaeron Winter. Old is the Null Overseer. Ice Troll Berserker, Ice Troll Trapper, Mud Golem. New is the Ogre Mauler, Ice Troll Berserker, Ice Troll Priest, Mud Golem. Oof. So you got... Are we looking at the right one? Lordaeron Winter. So that's Lordaeron Fall, that doesn't change. So Lordaeron Fall gives you these creatures. I'll just quickly gloss over those. I've actually got so many units now I can't build anymore. There we go. So you got Brute, Mud Golem, Knoll Warden, Ogre Magi. So those are all kind of cool. They all serve their own purpose, so I can understand not changing those. Now we have the old when it comes to winter. Try to keep myself awake. So you got Mud Golem, Overseer, Berserker, Trapper. I think the Trapper's really cool with the Ensnare. You got the Priest and the Mauler. So the Mauler is replacing the Overseer. You get to keep the Mud Golem. You get to keep the Berserkers. But the Priest now replaces the Trapper. And the Mauler replaces the Overseer. So that's a bit of a nerf, if anything, because the Overseer is really good in comparison to the Mauler. 100 less health, but he provides that damage aura, which is really sick. So I'm surprised, because most of these changes have been to give characters more utility. But in this one, they've kind of removed it a little bit. Whilst you do get the Priest, which I think is a very good addition, because the Priest helps a lot with creeping. I think it's a shame that you miss out on the Trapper. I think you could almost replace the Berserker with
Stay cool.
the Trapper, but that's just a personal preference. The Berserker is obviously very good. This is essentially the same as the Lordaeron Summer, which is obviously a working template, so I understand why this is very similar, but it's kind of a shame. But maybe the Troll Trapper's too strong in Snare. Honestly, that could be too strong, so actually disregard what I just said. I think that might be too strong.
What you want?
Having such an early game in Snare, I think could be too strong. The only way to balance it would be just simply nerf the creature, but I don't know if you want to do that and reduce the time that the creature is ensnared for. Yeah, I think that might be too strong in Snare. It is cool though. I do enjoy it for 4 versus 4 RT. You don't really have it anymore though. It used to be on a map called Death Knell. So anyway, continuing. Sunken... no, we're on Northrend. Nerubian Warrior. So we keep those. Berserkers kept. So the only thing changing is the Seer over the Web Spinner, from what I can tell. So you got the Seer over the Web Spinner. So Frost Revenant, Berserker, yeah. So it's just this Seer over the Web Spinner. Interesting. So the Seer is actually quite powerful. 30 to 36 damage, 600 health ain't too bad. He does have Raised Dead. He misses out on Web, which is a shame because that allows players to web a dragon or something on a map where they wouldn't have that option. Say, for example, you was a human player and you don't have Crypt Fiends, but there's a dragon. You could pull them back and web. But I think this is really powerful. I think it might be better if he had Web and Raised Dead than Abolish Magic and Raised Dead. But then again, the Abolish Magic is obviously very strong and useful for player interactivity. So don't change anything based on what I just said. I think that's fine. I think that's a cool change. It's just a shame to miss out on that Web, but something's got to give. Maybe you could even get rid of the Berserker, to be honest, and replace that with the Web Spinner, because it's more interesting than the Berserker, but it's still a ranged unit. Now we've got Sunken Ruins. Murgle Snarecaster, you get to keep that. Snapper's gone, replaced with the Bloodgill. Deep Seer's gone, replaced with the Hermit. And Giant Sea Turtle's gone, replaced with the Grunt. So, Sunken Ruins. Snarecaster is one of the strongest, and they increase the cost of it. So that makes sense. It is ridiculously good. It does have a low health, but if you micro him, he's pretty damn good. He's got slow, Abolish Magic, really gone darn good damage, and he's ranged. So, wow. Snapper is the old. That's been replaced by the Hermit and whatnot. So let's take a look at the Bloodgill. That's a solid healer, basically. Like the Troll Priest, Dark Troll Priest. Just does its job. Hermit has Purge. So if you ever needed to deal with summons, you've got a character that can deal with that. So like a Troll Priest, but he just doesn't have the heal. So he's like almost a slightly worse Troll Priest. Because he doesn't have the heal. Whereas the Priest has the Abolish Magic and heal. But he's got pretty good armor. And a little bit more health. And probably a little bit more respectable damage. The Deep Seer is one of the strongest units in the game. And that's probably why it's been nerfed and removed. Because this guy has Entangling Roots and Summon Prawns for 75 mana, which gives you 2 of these. He is pretty insane, but he does cost a lot. So bear that in mind. He is 500 gold, so there's a reason why he's that strong. Sea Turtle, just a normal sort of range damaging unit. Not much health, but a bit tanky. Replaced with the Grunt. And I think that's those covered. So let's move those over to there. Not the turtle. So Mercenary camp units. Oh, there's the Village Fall. So Kobold has been replaced by Kobold Tunneler. Murloc Huntsman, which has Ensnare, has been removed and replaced by the Taskmaster. Assassin is the same. Geomancer is the same. So Assassin and Geomancers are one of the best units in the game. Although Assassin's since been nerfed in terms of the cost, but not in terms of what it provides. And Geomancer is a range unit, low health, but obviously the slow and Abolish Magic really helps to make up for that. You get the Tunneler now, which is basically, what is it, like a footman with bash, basically? That could be really annoying to deal with. Imagine getting mass Tunnelers and just stun locking someone. That could be a new strategy. and the Taskmaster, which is basically like the Null Overseer. He provides the command aura, but also has bash. But 100 less health, but he gets the bash as well. So that's kind of really cool for an aggressive play. But you're losing the Huntsman with the Ensnare. And the really cheap Kobold, which is like a terrible ghoul. And there you go. I'm probably not going to read over all of these notes. We're just going to gloss over these ones. Because these are just basically going over the cost increase. So we're literally just going to take a look at these. Feel free to sort of observe these with your eyeballs more than anything else. It's just general additions to increasing the stock delay, which means that you have to wait longer before you can initially buy the unit. And then there's costs to the gold, whether it be an increase or a decrease. So that makes the unit more in line with the power. So for example, the Assassin was increased in terms of its damage cost. Or rather its damage value, because it is very good, and I think it originally cost like 250 in gold, but now it's like 260. So you can see there's a lot of changes. I think the main thing to take from this is the initial stock delay. I think the reason why that's been increased on a unit like this is because it has essentially a tier 2 ability. But I disagree with such a long wait. I think 220 seconds is more than enough. I think 440 seconds is too long. If you really wanted, maybe 320 seconds at most. But I think 440 seconds is just like... Obviously, you have to take into account the time it takes for a player to build up a hero and a unit, so seconds go past, but I think 440 seconds is still too long. And Curse isn't that strong. So, okay. Balance-related bug fixes. So, the Makrura Deep Seer creeps will no longer sometimes cease to react to enemy units when being attacked by a single unit or hero, so that means you can no longer exploit this. This was something that was exploitable in 4 versus 4 RT, typically with a Blade Master. You just walk in and go straight on top of the unit, right-click it, and then it will basically almost never do anything. Because it's trying to work out what to do, aka summon prawns, but it doesn't necessarily see enough units that are threatening it to summon a prawn, so it just stands there. So as an interesting aside, this bug originates from the summon prawns ability. Like many abilities, summon prawns adjust the behavior the unit is assigned to. Typically this is for deciding when to cast an ability or who to target with it. While this bug may only affect the Mercenary Deep Seer in multiplayer, this fix should also clear up some AI strangeness for units using it in custom games. Items can no longer be destroyed by projectiles when in a hero's inventory. This is going to nerf custom hero survival. So what this is relating to is an item can be destroyed, typically after 2 attacks by any unit, generally speaking. So if you were on the second attack to pick up that item, it would still be destroyed before the second attack launches and hits you. Or rather, hits you. So I'll just read out the notes, because this will also go over it. While we do want to keep the counterplay option of killing items as a means of denial, we want to address this specific strange behavior. Currently, if a projectile, aka like a ranged unit, like a Crypt Fiend or an archer arrow, is in mid-flight, it will always do damage to an item, regardless of whether or not it was picked up. So on the second attack, if a troll headhunter throws a spear, his second spear, and you pick up the item before that spear hits the item, it will go into your inventory and then get deleted. It will always get deleted no matter what, even if you picked it up before that second attack landed. So what this does is it stops that from happening. This felt especially strange when a high-speed hero would attack, pick up an item, move away, and then suddenly lose the item because of slow-moving projectiles landing at the item's previous location. Additionally, this behavior now matches how units picked up by a Zeppelin functions. Oh my goodness, there's still more. So there's some rotations to maps. This is something we can take a look at another video. They've replaced Talon, which I think is a good change, with Brightwater Oasis. I've yet to take a look at Brightwater Oasis. They say Brightwater Oasis contains a new interesting map feature. Each side of this map will have 1 goblin merchant and 1 goblin laboratory, but each will spawn in 1 of 2 locations. This adds an interesting wrinkle to adjusting one's creeping attack routes based on map conditions. These locations are linked and symmetric, so there shouldn't be balance concerns around one player having a short distance to a shop than the opposing player. Well, I'll have to take a look at it to judge that. 2v2, removed Phantom Grove Circle of Fallen Heroes. I don't know this map very well, but I never really liked that map too much. Rolling Heroes, heals can be removed. Yeah, that's kind of rubbish. Don't know about Guardians, but probably won't be worse. Banewood Bog being removed is obviously great because it's not really that much of a cool map. And it's caused Blizzard so many problems. Added Northern Felwood. This was one of the maps that actually got very highly ranked in a Hive Workshop map making tournament that myself and Sour, Warfree Sour, judged. And we both gave this one pretty reasonable, respectable points, being 4 versus 4 RT players. We know the maps quite well, what to expect in a map. So this is a welcome addition. Free for all, removed Murgle Oasis, and added Greenville Woods. I'm not familiar with Greenville Woods, but Murgle Oasis is kind of cool because of the middle with the mana. So I don't know about that one. Map updates. To understand it, critters added to the map. I didn't even realise there weren't critters on the map. Wow. That's the case in some maps. Twisted Meadows. Greed Gnoll Camp gets an additional 1 Gnoll and 1 Brute drops a level 1 power-up item. This is because the camp was feeling unrewarding. It also adds a breakpoint where a single hero can reach level 3 by creeping the Gnoll Camp and 2 yellow camps outside the front. I think this map is still really hard for human, but I think little things like that can help. Just give a player that doesn't have the power to creep something stronger actually more to get out of it. This is it's probably going on to like an hour and a half. I really wanted to make this as quick as possible, but it goes to show you how much of a change they've made with these patches. Previously 2 start locations could do this, but the other 2 would result in a hero just slightly short of level 3. Echo Isles added extra trees so the southwest expansion doesn't cause issues of units getting stuck. Filled in various pathing holes around the outer edges of the map. While it was uncommon for players to get their units stuck behind the southwest expansion location, and stuck units could be freed through destroying trees, we want to solve the issue more directly. Sanctuary, so they've added critters, removed 2 apprentice wizards from the north and the south, reduced the item drop from the Ogre Magi from level 6 to level 5. So that was where you would have, thank you very much there, Baraldi, again, for Bradley, thank you very much there. Yeah, so you would originally just go beeline to the Ogre Magi, kill it, and hope that you get the Infernal, which is no longer a level 6 charge because they moved that into the artifact. Again, if you're watching this, Blizzard, do not make the Infernal a level 7 artifact. Just remove it. That's easier, honestly. Yeah, so you would creep this very easily for a very powerful item. Now they've made it a level 5 charge item, which is still powerful, but it's not going to be as game-breaking because you could go to someone's base with an Infernal Stone almost near the start of the game. It was really fun, but it was pretty broke. There was feedback that the Ogre Magi at the map's north and south middle red camps were a bit too easy to pull away and kill in the early game. That would result in a powerful level 6 charge item being dropped early on, which can make rush strategies overstrong. To address this, we reduce the level of the item while making the camp slightly easier overall to reflect the level of the item dropping. So yeah, that's a good change, I think, overall. Twilight Ruins, LV. Remove the Skeletal Grunt and replace it with 2 Burning Archers at each of the middle red camps. Previously, these creep camps lacked any anti-air elements other than Death Coil. This gave players who rushed air units, undead especially, a bit too much of an advantage when creeping Cough, Frostworms Cough, or Gargoyles. This change should make these camps require more time and investment to take down. So that's absolutely fine, because you could pull the big guy, because the big guy is going to drop the item, but the big guy does Death Coils, and that's what they're talking about, is you're immune to Death Coils when you're undead. But this Burning Archers are going to be attacking you, and they're going to be using Searing Arrows, so you're going to be taking some damage whilst trying to pull the creatures away, whereas the Skeletal Grunts were melee, so you could kind of avoid them for the most part. So it makes the camp harder in some respects, so better as well for balance. User interface. Team coloured health bars are no longer on by default for new users. Please note these PTR patch notes are a work in progress and will be updated with further changes before the release of patch 1.32.6. Thank you very, very much for watching. This is WTiiWarcraft. I have been going on for a very long time now. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to thumbs up, subscribe, share the video. It does really help out a lot. I hope, Blizzard, you've watched this. I'm not expecting you to take anything from what I've said and definitely make a change, but I would hope that you listen and understand the emphasis that I've put in terms of the balance for some changes that you've made. And hopefully you might change your ideas. Generally speaking, I think almost all of these changes are really good and definitely moving in the right direction, which is impressive because it does seem to indicate that you are actually playing the game and you have a better idea of what is going on. Because honestly, A lot of these changes make sense. They are reflective of the current meta and how characters behave, how they act, the playability, the fun factor, the strategies. It all comes into account when reading through these patch notes. So very interesting, and I'm really interested to see how the Crypt Lord plays. I think he could probably end up getting nerfed before this patch goes through. But we'll see. But he has really got some buffs. One thing, Blizzard, though, if you genuinely are watching, is can we do something about the Death Knight's movement speed? Perhaps you have to remove or nerf the Tauren's movement speed. I think it's currently 10, 20, 30%. If it was something like, I don't know if you can do values like 7 and 8%. I think there is something where you can't. But maybe if you were able to find a way to get that done and have level 3 be 25% instead of 30%. Little baby steps. Ideally, I would reduce it even more, but then undead players would get really angry at me. But part of the reason why you always see Death Knight picked is basically not just because of the coil, but almost more because of the movement speed. It gives them so much strength and power to move across the map and additionally creep and manipulate player movements. So I really think that needs to be taken into account. I don't know how you're going to nerf it without essentially pissing everyone off. But generally speaking, I think something needs to be done about the Death Knight. He is very annoying right now. Anyway, I've gone on so long. Thank you once again very much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Any feedback is welcome. Did you enjoy the comparison of the abilities and the units whilst going over the patch notes, trying to demonstrate everything? If you did, write why and how. All that kind of stuff really helps me to create further videos and work on more content for Warcraft 3. Thanks again. Have a great day. All the best. Daytime is good time. Bye-bye.